to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to dive into Daniel Jeremiah's mock 2.0 and give you guys my opinion on who he took at number 11 overall for the New York Giants. Now, of course, if you looked at the title, you know who he took, but I want to talk about how he got there and whether or not I agree that it's a possibility that the New York Giants could potentially take Gregory Rousseau at number 11 overall. Now, of course, this is all, speculation. We don't know who's going to be, selected in free agency and so on and so forth, and that will change a lot of teams' needs. But, of course, Denver right now could very well be in the market for a corner. When I did my mock draft, it wasn't as evident. They could go a lot of ways, but I agreed basically with his entire top 10. Where I disagreed with Jeremiah was at number 11. But would I be shocked if the New York Giants ended up with Gregory Rousseau? I suppose not. Would it be my ideal choice? No. I think we all agree at this point in time that, one, this is not the richest edge rusher draft class. And usually I am a believer of drafting towards the strength of the draft, especially when it fits one of your biggest needs. And the New York Giants' biggest need, at least in my opinion at this point in time before free agency, is probably a playmaker on the offensive side of the football. In addition to this, in addition to that, I'm going to talk to you about who else may have fallen in the Giants' lap in this draft at number 11 overall, who I would have a lot of interest in. Jeremiah is a guy that I really respect. I think he's very knowledgeable. I think he's very good at evaluating players. And generally, his mocks are fairly accurate. One thing I want to give him credit for, last year, he had Mekhi Becton going way early in the draft, way before anybody else. Mekhi Becton really came onto the scene because of Daniel Jeremiah when he mocked him to go to the Giants at 4th overall. And maybe it was just to bring attention to the prospect and be able to say that I was the first one to really point him out. Because a lot of people were shocked when he did that. Obviously, he ended up falling to the Jets, but a lot of people could argue that Mekhi Becton last year was the best rookie left tackle in the NFL. So, at least in his rookie year. I think as Giant fans, we all hope that Andrew Thomas could surpass him. We'll have to wait and see how their careers play out. But Jeremiah has a reputation for being a very good evaluator of talent and usually is fairly accurate with these mock drafts. Of course, you're just throwing darts at a board right now because we don't know what these teams are going to do in free agency. But in terms of his top 10 before the New York Giants were up, I'm in wide agreement with almost his entire top 10. As a matter of fact, if I was going to do a mock draft today, it may be my exact top 10. His top 5 was the same as my top 5 in my first mock draft. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence. The most obvious pick in this year's draft. Just like Joe Burrow was obvious last year, I think we all know Trevor Lawrence is going to Jacksonville. I would be shocked if he does not. Tremendous talent. Number 2 to the Jets. Just like me, Jeremiah is in agreement that the Jets will be going quarterback. He's not buying into the rumors about that they may stick with Sam Darnold. He has them taking Zach Wilson, to which I agreed. I had them taking Zach Wilson in my first mock draft also. I think he's the second best quarterback in this year's draft, and I think he does fit the Jets scheme from everything that I've read. So I like Wilson going to the Jets. Number 3 to Miami. Miami could go, in my opinion, one of two ways here. Wide receiver or offensive line. He had them doing what I did. I had Jamar Chase. So did Jeremiah. I think it makes a lot of sense for Miami to take Jamar Chase there. I think he's far and away the best wide receiver in this year's draft class. Number 4, same pick. I had Justin Fields. He had Justin Fields. I think the Atlanta Falcons will move on at the quarterback position. I think Fields makes a lot of sense. Number 5, he had Penei Sewell. I had Penei Sewell. Cincinnati Bengals have come out and said that they need to protect Joe Burrow this year. And if Sewell falls to them there, it only makes sense. He's been talked about as being one of the best left tackle prospects in quite some time. A guy with a lot of upside. Some people feel like Rashawn Slater is more technically advanced, but Penei Sewell has more upside. I do think, like Jeremiah, that Cincinnati would go with a tackle at that spot. Number 6, I think I had the Eagles actually taking Jalen Waddle in my first mock draft, but I definitely contemplated taking Pitts there. Everything that I've read, and that's what Jeremiah had. He had the Eagles taking Kyle Pitts. Every mock draft I've read has a lot of people have the Eagles being at least interested in Kyle Pitts. They feel like he fits the Sirianni offense. You've heard rumors that they're going to move on from Zach Ertz, and we know that the Eagles like to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. In this spot, I could see the Eagles either going quarterback or going with Pitts or maybe a wide receiver, or even possibly Micah Parsons. But I have no qualms here with them taking Kyle Pitts. I think it makes sense. Number 7, he had Micah Parsons going to the Detroit Lions. I think I had Parsons going 9 in my first mock draft to Denver, but I would change that right now, and I would have Denver going with a corner. Parsons to the Lions is not crazy, especially if he doesn't get knocked down due to some of the things that have come out on him out of Penn State. Again, pretty much in agreement with that pick. Number 8, Trey Lance, my exact pick. I had the Panthers taking Trey Lance. They need a quarterback. Trey Lance has a lot of upside, and he gets an opportunity to get his quarterback there. I think Teddy Bridgewater's kind of a stopgap. A lot of upside there with Lance. Could definitely see them doing that. 9 and 10 to me is obvious. If both corners get there, I think both corners are going to go back-to-back. I think Denver definitely needs a corner at this point in time. You got your choice there. He had him taking Caleb Farley. Then he had the Cowboys taking Patrick Surtain. And if Patrick Surtain's there, that's a major weakness for the Dallas Cowboys. I think they need to address that secondary. And if Surtain is there, arguably the best corner in this year's draft, I'd be hard-pressed to think that the Cowboys would pass him up. They could go with Rashawn Slater, try to rebuff that offensive line. I think those are the two options there. But overall, his top 10, I'm almost in complete agreement with. I think I really agree with his mock draft. Of course, it's where he got to my team, the New York Giants, where I happen to disagree. Will I cry about it if the Giants end up taking Rousseau? No. I mean, edge rusher is definitely a need of ours. I've been outspoken to saying that I think wide receiver, corner would probably be where I'm leaning. But if you can get a guy that you feel is a dominant edge rusher, go ahead and have at it. In terms of what he had to say, this is what he had to say for the Giants. I know Dave Gettleman has let it be known that he wants to add playmakers on offense. At the end of the day, though, he's not able to pass up on the big athletic edge rusher. And Rousseau is huge. He's 6'7". He's a mammoth. And maybe he feels like he would fit the Giants scheme very well. Everything that I have read about the guy, he's not the most technically skilled guy now. To be fair, he sat out this year, and this could have been a year of growth. And maybe the New York Giants feel like with their great coaching staff, with Patrick Graham and Joe Judge, they could get the most out of a guy that has maybe a very high ceiling. So I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of the New York Giants drafting Greg Rousseau, but he had them taking Greg Rousseau with still Rashawn Slater, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith still on the board. So I'm in complete agreement with him that Devontae Smith could very well drop to the New York Giants. That's who I had the Giants taking at 11, and I do think he's going to fall down mock drafts, and I've thought that for about a month now, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm not shocked that he has Smith dropping. I am shocked, however, that he has Greg Rousseau going to the Giants over those 3 prospects. But like I said, maybe in his head, he feels like Greg Rousseau has such a high ceiling that the New York Giants would not be able to pass him up. But one thing I'll say, I don't know if Joe Judge is going to be attracted to players that decided to sit out due to the virus. I could be wrong. And also, I don't necessarily think he's going to prioritize the edge rusher position that early in the draft. I go back to the days with the Patriots. They never did that. Very rarely did you see the Patriots take a first-round edge rusher. And I think it would be a mistake in a draft like this, especially when we need to help out Daniel Jones as much as we can, to take a flyer on a edge rusher prospect that we don't really know what he could become ultimately. Yes, he had 15 sacks his second year at Miami before he came out for the draft this year, but everything you read about the guy, he's not technically skilled yet. He's got a world of ability, but he's a project. And to the New York Giants, in a year where they really have an opportunity to help out Jones, whether it be on the offensive line or the wide receiver position, want to take a project at the edge rusher. I'm all for taking edge rushers when they're safer and maybe even a higher ceiling than that of a guy like Greg Rousseau. But we'll have to wait and see. Rousseau, of course, was a guy that was being mocked in the top 5 of last year before he sat out this year, and maybe the Giants ultimately will be in love with him. After the Giants, I'll just go over the next 3 picks. He had the next 3 guys that I would consider before Rousseau going to the 49ers, the Chargers, and the Vikings. The Niners, he had taking Rashawn Slater, who I would not be upset at all if the Giants selected at number 11. It would really secure both ends of the offensive line for years to come. Jalen Waddle going to the Chargers at number 13, so he had him as the 2nd overall wide receiver, which I agree with. And then he had Devontae Smith going to the Vikings, which I don't really understand that pick. Maybe he feels like at that point Devontae Smith is too high of an upside at the wide receiver position to pass up and is far and away the best player on the board. But the Vikings have strong wide receivers to begin with. All in all, I would be surprised if the New York Giants passed up on those 3 prospects for Greg Rousseau. At the end of the day, the New York Giants showed last year that they were capable of having a top 10 defense, and they need help on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not saying they don't need to buff up the defense and fill in some holes, and getting a guy like Greg Rousseau, they may feel very well may do that. It'll come down to how Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman feel about whether his upside is worth taking him there. But you never know. You know, it's the draft, but I would be surprised if they took him over those wide receiver prospects. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Still got 2 months till the draft, but it's fun to talk about. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.